Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're putting on our aprons, maybe metaphorically, maybe not. We're getting into let's say, the heart of classic French cooking.
We are. We're looking at brown veal stock, fond de veau brun.
And this isn't just like soup broth, is it? It's fundamental.
Oh, absolutely not. It's often called liquid gold for a reason. It's this incredibly rigorous, time-consuming process.
Okay.
But it's the absolute engine behind all those classic French sauces. I mean, seriously, without it, you basically have nothing in that tradition.
Right. So our mission today, let's unpack this. The history, the chemistry involved, which sounds fascinating, and just the sheer discipline it takes.
Yeah, turning, humble bones into this foundation.
And it's more than just a recipe, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
almost like a rite of passage.
Yeah.
Connects chefs way back.
Exactly. It connects modern chefs to the very beginnings of organized cooking, of gastronomy. And to really get why it demands so much discipline, you have to look at where it came from.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the shift from medieval cooking lots of heavy spices hiding flavors to this modern idea of refinement. It really takes shape in royal France.
So 17th century, Louis XIV's era, what was going on there? Why suddenly focus on, well, refining broth?
Well, it was all about prestige, wasn't it? And clarity. Louis XIV's court, they wanted elegance, lightness in everything, including food. So those heavy old medieval sauces, they needed replacing, and that required a new, clean foundation. The documented start is often pegged to François-Pierre de la Varenne.
La Varenne, right? The culinary pioneer.
Yeah, exactly. His book, Le Cuisinier François, back in 1651, it wasn't just recipes. It was, the first time someone really wrote down a system for making proper brown stock.
We kind of codified it for the elite.
Pretty much for the aristocracy, yeah. He was arguing that cooking should focus on the actual taste of the ingredients, their essence. And that systemization, that really kicked off what we think of as modern French cuisine.
Okay, so La Varenne gives us the blueprint. But it didn't stop there, right? It kept getting refined, especially as professional kitchens started appearing.
Definitely. And that's where people like Antonin Carême come in.
Yeah.
Later on.
What was his contribution? This is what, 18th, 19th century?
Yeah. Carême really, he elevated the status of stock. He lived through this big transition period in cooking, and he's the one who famously called stocks the soul of the kitchen.
The soul of the kitchen. Wow.
He made it sound almost philosophical, didn't he? He cemented its importance. But then, if Carême told everyone why stock was crucial, Auguste Escoffier came along and told them exactly how to make it perfectly every time.
Hold on. So Carême calls it the soul, but then Escoffier feels the need to standardize it again in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
Why? What was Escoffier adding?
Well, think about the context. Carême was maybe more of the artist. Escoffier, he was working when you had these huge grand hotels opening up everywhere. The Ritz, the Savoy, international fine dining.
Right, scale, consistency.
Exactly. He wasn't just thinking about soul. He needed absolute consistency.
Yeah.
In every single top kitchen, London, Paris, New York. His book, Le Guide Culinaire from 1903, it laid out the technique with such military precision, really.
Right.
Professional chefs today, they're often still following his basic steps. He made it replicable. Doesn't matter who you are, where you are, you follow the steps, you get the result.
That level of continuity is, well, it's pretty amazing. So this one, specific standardized brown veal stock, underpins basically all the great French sauces.
The mother sauces, yeah.
Okay, let's pivot a bit. From history to chemistry. Because turning bones into this liquid gold, as you called it, sounds like there's some serious science involved.
Oh, absolutely. It is. People often think, stock is just boiling stuff. But fond de veau brun, it's really defined by two key stages. First, you roast. Then you simmer for a very long time.
And the roasting, that's where that deep brown color comes from. That's essential, right?
Totally essential. And that color, plus that incredibly deep flavor, it comes from the Maillard reaction.
The Maillard reaction, like searing a steak.
Exactly the same principle, that browning. But here, you're applying it to the veal bones and the vegetables using dry heat for quite a while. You're caramelizing sugars, browning proteins, basically creating flavor molecules before you even think about adding water.
Right. You build the flavor first, then extract it. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are the non-negotiables, the ingredients you absolutely need?
Okay, first, veal bones. And you really want joint and marrow bones if you can get them. High collagen content, that's key.
Collagen, okay.
Then your classic mirepoix, that's onion, carrot, celery for the aromatic base.
Balance. And then tomato paste. That always seems a bit odd, adding something red to make something brown.
Yeah, it feels counterintuitive, doesn't it? But it does two things. One, when it roasts, it actually helps deepen that brown color, the brun.
Uh,
And two, maybe more importantly, the acidity in the tomato helps break down the collagen during that long simmer. Makes it easier to extract the gelatin. It's like a little catalyst.
okay, Tristan.
And finally, you need your bouquet garni, just a little bundle of thyme, bay leaf, parsley stems, maybe some peppercorns. Then you're ready for water. Cold water. Critically cold water.
We'll definitely get to the cold water rule, but before we do, let's say you've done the 8 hours, you've put in the work. What tells you, yes, I've nailed it? What are the key characteristics?
Okay, three main things. First, clarity. It needs to be this deep, rich brown, but it has to be translucent. Almost like, I don't know, a very dark, clear tea, no cloudiness.
Right.
Second, body. It should feel silky, viscous on the tongue. That's the gelatin you worked so hard to extract. If you chill it properly, it should set like a loose jelly.
Wow.
And third, the aroma and flavor. Intense, meaty smell, definitely. But the actual taste needs to be quite neutral, balanced. It shouldn't scream carrot or thyme. It's a rich foundation ready for other flavors to be built on top.
Okay, that clarity, body, and balance flavor. Got it. Now let's dive into the technique, the secrets. This is where, a simple broth becomes cuisine, right?
This is absolutely where the precision comes in. Let's start with roasting those bones. You mentioned the Maillard reaction. How do you get it perfect without, well, ruining everything?
Yeah, there's a fine line between brown and burnt, I imagine.
Oh, it's a razor's edge. You're aiming for maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour at a pretty high heat, say 200 Celsius, 400 Fahrenheit. You want them dark brown, really deep, like mahogany.
Okay.
But if they go black, even just a little charring, you get this acrid, bitter taste. And you cannot fix that. It's done. You have to throw it out and start again. Painful.
Ouch. Okay. And I've heard a tip about roasting the vegetables, the mirepoix, separately. Why bother with that?
Yeah, that's a really good pro tip. It's because they cook differently. Bones are dense, vegetables have more sugar and water. Carrots especially are full of sugar. If you roast carrots for a whole hour alongside the bones, they'll just burn to a crisp long before the bones are ready. So you roast them separately, maybe for a shorter time, just until they're nicely caramelized. You get that sweetness, but none of the harsh, burnt flavor that would just muddy the final stock. Control. It's all about control.
Control. Got it. Okay. Bones are perfectly roasted. Veg is caramelized. Everything's in the pot. Now, for that rule you mentioned, the cold water rule. Why is starting with cold water so sacred? Why is hot water a culinary sin?
It comes down to physics, really, and getting that clarity and body we talked about. If you pour hot water over those bones, the proteins on the surface cook instantly. They seize up, tighten.
Like a seal.
Exactly. They form a seal, trapping impurities inside the liquid and also trapping some of that precious collagen inside the bones. Plus, it makes the stock cloudy right from the start.
Okay.
But if you start with cold water, the temperature rises slowly. This coke is the proteins and impurities, the sort of scum, to gradually float to the surface. Then you can easily skim them off. It ensures you get maximum gelatin out of the bones, and you end up with that crystal clear result. So always cold water. Always.
Okay, cold water it is. Then comes the long wait, the gentle simmer. 6, 8 hours, you said? What's the goal here? Just keeping it hot isn't enough.
No, definitely not. You want it active, but only just barely. Simmering, not boiling. That's the absolute key distinction.
Why is boiling so bad? Seems like it would speed things up.
It would, but it destroys the stock. A rolling boil churns everything up violently. It emulsifies the fat into the liquid, breaks down proteins in a way that makes everything cloudy and greasy. It's like putting it in a washing machine.
Okay, bad analogy for stock.
Very bad. You want the surface to just barely tremble. A few bubbles gently rising here and there, like a lazy geothermal pool, maybe. That slow, gentle heat is what extracts the goodness without ruining the clarity.
And all that time you're skimming. That sounds tedious.
It is tedious. But it's the price of admission for elegance. Every hour, sometimes more often, you have to patiently skim off that foam, that scum, and any fat that rises to the top.
Why? What happens if you leave it?
If you leave it, those impurities just get churned back into the stock. They make it taste muddy, maybe a bit greasy. Skimming constantly is what guarantees that really clean, pure, rich flavor and that beautiful, translucent look at the end.
And then straining, I assume, carefully.
Oh, yeah. Through the finest mesh sieve you have, probably lined with several layers of damp cheesecloth, you want absolutely zero sediment, pure liquid gold.
So after all that work, all that discipline, what does this perfect fond de veau brune actually let you do? How does it become this mother of all sauces?
Well, it's the ultimate starting point. If you have a batch of perfect brown veal stock, you unlock the entire classic repertoire. The most direct descendant is sauce espagnole.
The classic brown sauce.
That's the one. You basically just thicken the stock slightly, usually with a brown roux. That's your mother brown sauce right there.
And what about those really intense, concentrated versions chefs talk about? Demi-glace.
Right. That's where reduction comes in. You take that espagnole or even just the pure stock and you simmer it down, reduce it, often by half or even more,
Okay.
until it gets really intensely flavored, thick, viscous, coats the back of a spoon, almost sticky from all the gelatin. That's demi-glace, used for incredible richness and body.
And there's jus de voliere, too. That sounds slightly different.
Yeah, that's often seen more in modern plating. It's also a reduction, maybe not quite as intense as demi-glace. Sometimes it's just the stock reduced until its own gelatin thickens. It's slightly lié, means bound or thickened. It gives you that beautiful, glossy, mirror-like sheen you see drizzled over meat.
Wow. And all roads lead back to that initial pot of stock.
Every single one, that's the foundation.
This sounds like an insane amount of work for a kitchen to maintain. You mentioned this tradition stretching back, right, to those big 19th century kitchens.
Absolutely. The tradition of the Marmite. In the grand hotels, the big restaurant kitchens, like at the Ritz in Paris or the Savoy in London, they would keep these enormous stock pots, the Marmites, simmering constantly.
Like 247.
Literally day and night. They never let it stop. It was partly practical, of course, so they always had stock ready. But it was also a massive point of pride.
So,
It showed that the kitchen had the discipline, the staff, the resources, and the commitment to classical technique. It meant they could produce any sauce perfectly at any moment. It was a symbol of their seriousness.
I can only imagine the heat, the smell, the constant attention required. It really was a measure of dedication.
It absolutely was. And that's why making stock is still such a fundamental part of culinary training. It's like a whole culinary education in one pot.
How do you mean?
Well, it forces you to learn patience, first off, then precision. You have to understand the Maillard reaction, how gelatin extraction works, how to layer flavors slowly over time. You're directly connecting with centuries of chefs following the exact same demanding process. It teaches respect for the fundamentals.
It really is amazing that the sheer discipline needed to turn, basic bones into this foundational liquid is the key that unlocks so much complexity later on. It demands time, respect.
And focus. Which brings us back to Escoffier, doesn't it? He summed it up so perfectly. He said, "The stock is everything in cooking. Without it, nothing can happen."
That really says it all. The quiet power of getting the foundation, absolutely right. So something for you, our listener, to think about. If mastering one slow, precise, fundamental thing like fond de veau brune unlocks hundreds of advanced applications in cooking, what's the equivalent in your own life or work? What's that core patient discipline you need to master to unlock your own potential?